My wife has been getting really into wall art of late. She's been drawing it up in Illustrator, then carving it out on the Xcarve. With the launch of Easel Pro, we can show you some of the features that actually make her wall art possible. However, to start off with, we need a canvas on which to draw. So I've glued up a panel of Tassie oak. This is 3 boards, just scrap I had laying around, and a fairly janky piece of walnut veneer. It's seen better days. So I'm going to veneer this onto the Tassie oak, then we're going to cut through it to reveal a 2-tone design. Before I actually veneer this, I want to talk about the bag that I'm using. This is a kit put out by Raw Rocket. It's a funny name. They do skateboarding kits, so you can veneer your own skateboard. The kit includes the bag, a pump, some breather mesh. Nothing particularly fancy, but it's quite inexpensive for getting into veneering. They're not a sponsor or anything, just a product I happen to pick up for future projects. I've made a melamine platen, and this will help with air circulation. You can see that there's grooves all the way through. I've rounded over the edges, and it'll fit my canvas pretty well. We need to get glue onto the board here. I'm just going to be using Titebond 3. It has a bit of a longer open time than some of the other glues, Titebond glues. Proper cold press glue is probably a better approach, but I don't have any, not yet anyway, so for now this actually works pretty well. I really want quite a thick layer, well, relatively thick, even coverage glue. So after this is all veneered up, I'll cut it down to the dimensions I actually want. The tape here is just to hold it in position so it doesn't move on me when I apply some vacuum pressure. So this orange bag type material is breather mesh, and that's to make sure we don't block off the valve when we're trying to evacuate all the air. Traditional bags for veneering will have, vacuum veneering, will have a different type of seal on it. This has got a tar-like substance, which you can just take off, reuse. Works pretty well. Raw Rocket recommend you put the strip inside the bag so you don't forget about it. And you don't want to stretch the bag out, you just want to push down on the seal, because otherwise you can end up with a slightly stretched bag but not a slightly stretched seal, and it just won't work as well. So there are 2 pumps that you can get for the Raw Rocket system. This is the larger one, it evacuates twice as much air. You put it over the pump, over the valve, sorry, and pull the air that way. It's quite slow to get started, and an easier way is just use a shop vac. So I got it most of the way with the shop vac, and I'm going to finish it off with the pump. If you look at all the reflections, they'll start to change as the rest of the air is all drawn out. And it gets harder and harder to pump. On the smaller one, it clicks when you're done. So now I just need to leave this for probably 4 or 5 hours, and the Titebond should have set. and this is a pre-release version of Easel Pro. There's a couple of new features in Easel Pro and we'll use them now. First is lots more fonts. Well, as you can see, quite a few more fonts than, I think it's about 20 or so that the free version of Easel comes with. Second thing is that we've now got V-bits. So I'm going to select a 60-degree V-bit for my secondary pass, and for my first pass I'm going to use an 1/8 inch down cut bit. It says upcut, doesn't really matter. I'm going to set my material size to the size of the veneered board, and that's the wrong way around. Thickness doesn't really matter, we're only going to go down about 1 millimeter to get through the veneer. And my wife has prepared some artwork. And we need some text to go along with that. We're going to use the permanent marker font. Sort of a motivational and demotivational poster all in one. Reduce the size of that a fair bit. There we go, that's a bit better. Now at this stage there's no easing or kerning options for Easel, so having it in separate lines is the best option. We'll center that all and change the depth to 1 millimeter. The veneer is 0.6 millimeters, so that'll cut through and reveal the two. And one of the recently released features to Easel, which is in both the free and pro version, is the generate detailed preview button. You see that creates quite a high quality preview. And we can see in our text there's a lot of passes, and that's because the 1/8 inch bit won't actually get into them very well, so the V bit with the fine point is going to have to do quite a few passes. For artwork projects rather than a functional project, I like to set my 0,0 to the center of the artwork. That way if it's a little bit out here or there, it doesn't really matter, it's still going to be centered in the board. So when I actually get to the board at the set seal, I've drawn a little cross representing the 0 point. In Easel, we just need to select everything, set that to 0,0, and you can see that that's moved that off there. But that'll still give us the same toolpaths and everything, and Easel won't go, oh no, you can't do that. The preview doesn't quite update for that, but it works pretty well. When doing two-pass designs in Easel, when you go to do the actual carving, you're presented with this dialog. To start with, choose the roughing pass. And for the second pass, select Detail Pass. It'll ask you to confirm what bit was used for the previous pass. V-carving isn't just a V-bit plunging in like you would with a straight bit, but using the angle of the bit to get much more detail. Retracting where it can't get to full depth. Despite this being just a 1mm carving, you can see the Z-axis frequently retracting. So I'm really pleased with how this has turned out. It's got a coat of the Danish oil on it. For something on the wall, you don't really need too much in the way of protection. I may add another coat of Danish oil or just shellac over top, or just leave it. I really like what the two-tone look gives, being the walnut and the Tassie oak. It is different from painting things. It's neither better or worse, it's just different, and it's nice to have the option. So I'll certainly be playing with more veneer in the future for a lot of the wife's artwork. We'll probably mount this on the wall using some of those 3M sticky strips with Velcro, because for something this weight, 2 of those strips works really well. If you're interested in more of my wife's artwork, I'll have a link to the Etsy store down in the description. Now this didn't go off without a hitch. There are a couple of flaws which unfortunately were my fault. I can't blame the tools this time. A few pieces where the veneer chipped off, and that was more the quality of this veneer. There's a big crack running down the middle, and 3 tiny flakes that came off were all on that crack. When I was re-zeroing for the V-bit, I took the tape off from the middle section, then used the probe. Unfortunately, that means the V-bit went down the thickness of a tape further. Now, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you've got quite a sharp point, that little tiny bit means that it is visible if you look up close. So again, that's on me. Every piece of software, every tool has pros and cons to it. Some will work with your workflow, some will not. Easel Pro is relatively inexpensive compared to other V-carving software, so that alone might be fine for what you want to do. It may lack some of the features you want or not. Really depends on the sort of stuff that you're doing if you're using a CNC. Thanks for watching.